You're live. Okay, this is a meeting of the Sleepy Hollow Open Development Corp. The date is March 10th. Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is presentation by Marathon Development regarding 100 College Arms. So with that, I think we'll just turn it over to you guys to tell us what the LDC's involvement might be in your project. You know, we met with the folks that are renovating the other building already, and I did watch your presentation last week to the trustees. So yeah, you guys want to just kick it off and tell us how the LDC might be involved?
Certainly. It's okay if I speak from here? So
Yeah, we don't
I know
really
like
have
microphones.
No, no,
not as high tech as the word.
All right, so good evening. My name is Brian Sinsbaum. I'm an attorney with Zarin Steinmetz. I'm the applicant. Just do introductions first. With me here tonight, I have Brian Riley, Zone Engineering. I have Ed Vogel of W&W Architects. And then to my right, I have Mark Soja and Matt Judge, the applicant. So we have our entire team here tonight to answer any questions that you guys might have. The property.
Just interrupt, just so you know who we are. We've got the LDC board. It's 5 of us. We're all here. And Dan is the manager of the LDC.
And Justin, attorney.
And Justin's on the phone up in Albany.
All right, thank you for the introductions. So our project, as you sounds like you're already aware, what we're proposing to do is construct a second affordable housing building with a garage, garage-free parking on what's currently the parking lot at 100 College Ave. With that project, we've already appeared before the planning board. We've appeared before the village board as well, and the involvement with the LDC is primarily due to the fact that what we're seeking is a strategic redevelopment zone. So we have the SPR district, and one of those requirements is that the village or the LDC have an ownership stake in the property that's subject to be redeveloped. So in this instance, we have also part of this as a subdivision, but we'd be proposing that there be involvement for the LDC on the entirety of the property so that that SPR zone, floating zone, be dropped on the property. Now, the rationale for the floating zone that we have, the SPR, is that with that, it allows us to have increased development on a certain site, which is within like the inner city. Some of the other requirements that you have, I won't go into those details for you, but we do require the SPR to be dropped for this development. It does provide great benefits for the city, for the village with regard to the affordable housing. We're addressing stormwater in that area, so we'll be putting stormwater management systems in place on that property, so we're aware of stormwater issues in play. And also, what we're proposing is a retail component of this. So there will be some ground level retail, which goes along with the village's downtown marketing plan. It's something that the village board is interested in. We reached out, obtained funding for that particular development to have affordable housing with the garage space as well as the retail. So we do.
How much square foot do you think you'd have for retail?
I think it's just over 2,000.
Right, it's roughly around 2,000. 2,000. Is that all on one side, or is
It is. So the retail is toward the Portland
side? Okay.
side, and 1 or 2 spaces, depending on how that gets shaped up. At least.
Built out is just empty space, nothing, no restaurant amenities, nothing like that, just.
We haven't gotten
We
that
haven't
far
gotten
yet,
that.
right? There's been some chatter about different uses. We haven't.
Okay.
Nothing's been settled.
There's no defined end user. Overall, just to give a rough outline as to what we're looking at here, we have board of trustees is involved in this application. With that is a special permit to drop that floating zone onto the property. We also have the village board involvement in what would be a text amendment and the zoning map amendment. So the zoning map would be for the floating zone. The text amendment would be to allow the retail on the site. So although the marketing study identified this property as being one to have retail, retail is not currently permitted on the site. So we'd be working with the village board to determine what that text amendment would be, the breadth of it, what the scope would be also for it, whether it be limited to circumstances, whether it be part of the SPR as a text amendment or it be the underlying R5 district.
So everyone knows what SBR was.
Yeah, so the
So we're all,
yes, so with regard to the SPR, a strategic property redevelopment floating zone.
oh, it's the floating.
Yes, the floating
The
zone.
floating zone? Okay.
Yes, correct. So the SPR floating zone, I apologize if I'm using it interchangeably, but those are one and the same. The, also with regard to the planning board, we do require planning board for one as a referral from the village board regarding each of the other items I just mentioned to you. So the tax amendment, zoning map amendment, and the floating zone. And then also we require site plan approval and subdivision. And right now it's all one property, but we'd be proposing to divide this into 2 separate lots. One would be zoning compliant in terms of lot area. The other one, reason why we need the SPR is it's slightly below. But it would be largely, these are all going to be interchangeable sites, they're going to be working together. There will be cross-access easements for parking, one building to go into the garage. It will continue to operate together.
So just so I'm clear, you need to split the buildable lot, is that right?
Correct. So we're splitting off.
This has nothing to do with the existing building.
Correct. That's going to be that the existing building will remain. It's going to be its own separate lot once we're done with the subdivision. The floating zone
But
will,
right now, it's not, it's all one lot.
it's all one lot.
So it's back to my question, is the split the existing building from the new construction?
That's correct.
So there'll be 2 lots at the end of the day?
Correct. 2 lots, each with their own independent building on each lot.
Right, okay.
Are you proposing just this lot to be changed or the whole combined?
In terms of the zoning.
Yeah.
The zoning will run the entire lot. So it'll run the entire lot here. This right here is easement area in the park. So part of this right now is this area currently is all paved. We're proposing to expand the park area, and expand that easement that we provide the village to allow for a greater area of park. So, the SPR will run along the entire property. That easement will just not be really part of this building. The lot line, I believe, is running right here. So it runs right through the middle, and this is just a dry area that goes through the middle. Cars that either go into a location up top, for loading. There are some handicap stalls and stalls here. The majority of the parking is going to be with the lower levels. Lower levels? Yeah, so the proposed, I believe it's 2 levels of parking.
Right, so it's going to be the first and second floor for parking. And then there's 4 floors of residential, affordable residential above it, 100% affordable, 105 units is proposed. And there is a partial lower level, and that's from Valley. Valley sits down, Port. So you just tuck into the single row of parking. It's basically 2 floors of parking and a parking garage type structure. Podium, and you have a U-shaped building above being the residential.
So we had spoken with Justin with regard to possibilities for how the LDC could engage in ownership and to satisfy the requirement that we had for that floating zone. And just I'll just read it so it's clear to everyone exactly what that requirement is. It's that the property must be owned by the village or its designated entity, the Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation. So that level of ownership doesn't need to be a full fee ownership. What we've proposed here is, because it is an affordable housing project, there will be a housing development fund So you will have a fund created, and there will be different memberships, members that will be so you have to find members of that fund. It's basically an organization. And whether or not the LDC would be engaged as a member of the underlying fund. That way, a lot of this could still work the way it normally would have. But there will be an ownership component, and there will be oversight, obviously, to the village and the LDC as to the operations of this. That works in most.
So you're suggesting that the LDC would have a percentage of along with your other partners,
It would
the
be-
ownership of the building?
They would, yeah, in order to satisfy them.
And is there a minimum that is required?
I don't believe there's a minimum requirement. It just shows that it just states that there must be ownership. A lot of times you may see a requirement, say like the most comparable thing I could say is you have an IDA that has a pilot that has to engage in some local ownership. A lot of times in those, it's a lease and lease back because it's very specific and the code as to what needs to be, there has to be ownership. That's what we've brought up as a possibility.
Not a lease back?
No, not lease back. Unless it's something the village was open to entertaining.
Oh, I thought that's what it's talked about last Tuesday.
It could be, but we've had discussions with
In the last
Josh.
week.
Yeah, in the last week with Josh and Justin.
So the new entity that's gonna own this only owns that, right? Is the other building
Correct.
this totally separate ownership structure? Are you selling that building?
So do you want the LDC to be your partner, your owner, or?
I believe the LDC. I mean, I think there's also benefits in terms of having the LDC involved. Whether it be tax exemption, those areas. That's something that we would look at. We do have currently an agreement on the underlying property for 2008 that encompasses the entirety of the property. So that's something that would have to be amended. That's already a tax abatement agreement that we have with the village as well as with Mount Pleasant. Those would be amended to redefine what the scope of the property is. And then the remaining property. Add that exempt or abatement, basically saying exemption, but that abatement be applied to the new ownership, the new lot that's newly created. So right now, the lot that we would want that abatement placed upon is not yet created until the planning board issues.
What was the logic in transitioning from a land lease back approach to say?
I think it was just over discussions. Yeah, I think just overall, it's something that we've done previously. The owners here that are saying with me, we've engaged in a very similar practice before. So it's not something that's new to us and it has worked in the past very well in terms of, I think, I can allow you guys to speak some more on it, but I believe in terms of issuing bonding and some other financing that goes along with affordable housing, I think that it kind of creates a more streamlined approach to that.
So the idea is, number one, to get the floating zone. And to get the floating zone, the LDC, for example, would need to be an owner.
Correct.
And then if those two things happen, that's when you can split the property.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of moving parts simply because we're going to the planning board. I think what's been agreed upon is that planning board will take lead agency. And because of that, there's a lot of flip-flopping that goes on. So we've already appeared before the planning board. We appeared before the board of trustees. It's been determined that planning board would be the lead agency, but they have yet to circulate their intent. So we would go back for planning board, they'll circulate their intent for lead agency, through the secret process. Then they'll eventually declare after 30 days. And in that time, we hope that we will also be scheduling a public hearing. But board of trustees cannot act until there's a negative declaration issued by the planning board. And then planning board cannot act until board of trustees adopts the strategic floating zone, the entirety of the property. So there's a lot of flip-flopping. I think it's going to occur within the same months for some of these. They'll obviously run simultaneously side by side, but it's not easily clear cut. I wish I had a chart I could definitely throw up there for you, but we have a longer list of the number of dates and number of deadlines, certain items, but I could certainly provide a clear chart. This is something we're working on.
Can you explain the difference between the floating zone and the R6?
Yeah, so the underlying zone is just a residential district. The floating zone permits you to have greater bulk criteria, dimensional criteria than you would otherwise be permitted in the underlying zone. So the rationale for this is increased building height, coverage that we have, like total floor area or FAR, that allows us to expand upon what is normally permitted. Right now, we have a much larger building than what we're even proposing in this case. So the current building that you see is larger than four. It's just that because it's all one, these are going to be split up in separate lots. It's very
Sorry,
different.
the current building is larger than what's shown?
What's being proposed, not what's shown, but what's being proposed. So you have right now you're looking at, I think you believe you can see the old building in the back. We're not showing we're not proposing a building as tall or with as many units. So it'll be a smaller building than what we have, but overall with coverage, the setbacks, building heights, we do need some level of flexibility on that, and that SBR floating zone allows us to achieve that.
So I'm just curious why, I think this is 6-story.
Yes.
So why a lower building height as opposed to higher?
So, we kind of looked at the area and the surrounding uses of the 4 stories. So having a 6-story building is a nice transition between the remainder of the R6, which is high-density residential, allows 10 stories, 100 feet. So with us being 6 stories, roughly 70 feet in height, is a transition between stark contrast between assets. Because of that, our massing is going to be shorter. We're spread out a little bit further, and the parking, right? So that's where the base is. So that's the premise behind the squatter list.
And I think you guys have a New York Forward grant, right? What's that? What is that amount?
It's $500,000.
Is it earmarked for something specific
It's just for this actual project that you're seeing. It's the same.
in general?
Yeah, in general, same project.
So there's no requirements for,
Did you have to do anything to get the New York? Like, does it have to be affordable housing?
Well, the project that was applied, I believe there are certain applications that went in, and our application that went in was for affordable housing.
And did you consider a mixed income building as opposed to all affordable housing?
Based on feedback we've gotten, preferences for the housing. People probably call between the income limits a bit, so they little more. The general rule is typically percent or 60%. But there's different programs around, so it might be there. Some goes 40 and 80%. So it'll be a little wider band.
But right now, it's all between 40 and 80% and no market rate.
So the floating zone allows you to build this, right? Talk to me about the splitting of the lot, which is, that's a requirement, right? You've got to get the lot split, right?
So, yeah, so we're subdividing that.
How do you go about doing that?
So the subdivision is done through planning board. So we would have to obtain a preliminary subdivision approval, final subdivision approval, and then we have to record that plat with Westchester County, where it becomes its own separate lot.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with the floating zone, right?
No, it's separate from the building zone.
Okay.
We're doing that primarily for the construction and just for financing purposes and because of other agreements that we have in place with the affordable housing. Without that subdivision, I don't believe the project would be easily viable.
Right. And then is there bonding involved too that you'd be looking for?
Don't believe we're seeking any binding from municipality. So this will be financed separately outside the municipality, but what we would be seeking is tax exemptions. Real property. Similar to what we have a tax abatement agreement. We can provide that to the LDC just so you have it readily available.
That's really between you and the village, right?
What does the ownership interest entail?
It's almost, I wish we brought it before, travel, always in here with us, but you'd be a member was for housing development. Fund. So the structure is beneficial owner and nominal owner. Beneficial owner is one of tax credits appreciation. Nominal owner is just housing development. Fund. And with that, how you'd be there to facilitate pilot agreement, tax exemption.
Sales tax.
So you're involved in the transaction as a ownership entity, but you're not a beneficial nominal. That's just in case that I can. I'm not a lawyer, but you remain in an organizational structure. As nominal.
Are there any other nominal owners?
So this would have this housing and fund company. It's called College Arms to HDFC Housing. We have typically there's 2 or 3 members and a chairperson, secretary of office.
But as far as
Board.
the ownership,
Who else would be part of this? LDC,
we be the only,
Typically, the beneficial owner is as well, to receive low income housing tax credits, which is a common vehicle for affordable housing. And then the nominal owner would be simply the HDFC.
so the beneficial owner would receive the tax credits, and would those be sold? Is that right? That's how it's financed. And that's how it's financed.
but we would be the sole nominal owner, is that right?
Yes, typically that's the way it's.
Yeah, we're gonna talk to Justin later, but for this part of the meeting, just wanted to get everybody up to speed. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I just go back to the mixed market rate apartment with affordable housing mix. I guess, last Tuesday and then, or since last Tuesday, it just seems like I'm struggling with segregating so much affordable housing into one block in all of Sleepy Hollow. And so it feels like if it was a mixed unit building, that it would be a little bit more balanced.
Have you done any analysis of the adjacent sites, to know what's affordable, what's not? Just it's clear that it's not circle or everything.
This is affordable housing, so we look at 80%. There's some real substantial rents. It's not free rent. The rents are $2,000. It's real rent that people earn their rent. It's not free housing.
Yeah.
So our rents range from down 30% for one bedroom would be $800, but 3 bedroom at 80 would be $3,250. So they're real rents. So the lower income, they're not quite as athletes. They're real rents. The problem with as you move towards more market rate housing, subsidizing project. So program property prices will driven by the subsidy state.
Is that tied to the number of units? So let's say you added another story of market rate or 2 stories of market rate apartments, and you kept the same number of units affordably. Would that result in the same potential affordable housing tax credits?
The amount would not change. Awesome. So in this development, let's look at numbers. So in this development, it's going to be 70% debt and 50% subsidy and equity transaction. So this is how these subsidies help close the funding gap between debt required.
So in order to build more market rate apartments, it's possible to buy it
Correct,
without
but
subsidy.
without the subsidy.
how is what's your timings or milestones you have to hit or deadlines on anything other than yesterday?
Oh, it's always, yeah. I mean, so there are certain deadlines, milestones, I think. For one side, there's the financing and development side, but then there's also the internal village approval side. What we do, one ask that I do have this evening, and I didn't bring it up earlier, was planning board's looking for some level of buy-in from the LDC and the village board. We had a discussion with the village board last week, and it doesn't need to be that we own it, but what we're looking for is some level of like a written letter, or some kind of correspondence saying that you had this meeting, that you are moving forward with discussions with us, or something of that nature to allow them to feel comfortable to move forward with their secret process. That's one thing that's requested by the planning board.
It's not hard action to it.
I think there was some feedback from the board of trustees last Tuesday about the design. Has there been any movement in that?
No, there isn't. We wanted to present what we have. Your board, you're doing this on purpose so everyone sees what was presented to the planning board. We're going back to the planning board next week, and we'll further that discussion. Yes, we do have to work on all of the requested documents.
For everybody, the feedback was, kind of the look and feel, angling to be more historic than it's modern, the exterior, panels, and then there was one, the exterior walls that are kind of just blank facing the street, making them more, pedestrian.
And the blank wall, part.
The blank wall in the park was one of the walls identified, as well as on, Valley. There's like a very big one that's just in the corner. Yeah, that.
We have moved forward also, like, aside from that, though, we have moved forward in discussion with staff on more of the engineering. Reports. So we haven't stayed stagnant.
Yeah.
Definitely moved forward.
Those are easy issues, right? Aesthetics.
Yeah, not ideal, sir.
But isn't that what?
It's all easy, right?
Yeah, but creating some sort of dynamic appearance, even though it's not an actual, but it looks like a pulse.
So just so I'm clear, you meet with the planning board next week. They're looking for some support, say it comes from us. Our support would mean that we're gonna attempt to become a nominal owner. What does that do for them? What happens after that?
So both the planning board and the village board at that point would have at least some level of comfort knowing that if they move forward with the secret process, they can say that we've satisfied the siting criteria. That's one of the ownership is one of the criteria. The other criteria is that we're located within the inner village on the map, which we are. And aside from that, you have to be within a half mile of the train station. We're within 0.3, give or take. So this would be the last component of that criteria, which would allow them to say that
But is that required to get the floating zone?
it is.
But the division is nothing, has nothing to do with either, right?
No, that's our own
Okay.
undertaking.
Okay, I get it. It's,
So you guys, there's improvements to the park that would then be deeded back to the village, is that the intent?
Right.
And whatever that
So
entails into that.
expanded, we given, village has an easement, so expand, the drawing showed, expanded that even across the land.
Yeah, but like with also like, each.
Oh, no, you can bet on the bathroom
And
or the village do that, what they want on this.
And I guess the other question for if we're ever some sort of partner is there, it's like during this whole process, how does like are we just sitting back and you guys are doing the whole thing, or are you talking through anything?
So there'll definitely be ongoing discussions as to how we will handle this ownership process. And since we'll be dealing with you on that, but we've made a point to ensure that any submission that we do have is affiliate to every agency. So first name the planning board, village board, and the LDC will be receiving at least one copy of that submission or a digital copy of that submission. That way that we're not leaving anybody behind in terms of what's going on. If there are certain things that the LDC would like to see us to do, if you have any input as to, say, like what you're saying on part, we're definitely open to hearing that and trying to work with you as to how we accomplish that and what needs to be done to do that. So we put it in a
Sounds
general.
like there's enough hands in that pot, so. You have that big of a role, right?
Yeah, there's no.
I think you talked to them. Okay, appreciative of this. I think I get it. It's really, as far as this nominal ownership, we gotta talk about that some more. Talk to Justin, but I just need to understand that more from a legal standpoint. Doesn't feel like there's really any economics involved in it, are there?
No.
Yeah. So, and us having that nominal ownership is what will allow for this floating zone to exist.
Exactly.
The separation of the lots is nothing to do with us. Okay, I haven't, everybody else good for now?
How many units was it again? 105 units. 65 ones, 82 twos. And.
All right, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yep. Is there anything you could do, what do you, in terms of like the breakdown of what we're proposing? You want that email to you?
Whatever you have, if you want to send it, that's
Yeah.
great.
I know we have lengthier submissions, but I'm happy to throw together just a very old list for you to so you understand exactly what the process is that we're doing. We are pulling together a more like a Gantt chart. So timing for you. So that's something that Justin had mentioned when we met with him.
Okay,
So that's something that we can provide that shows each of the items that we're seeking them from and the time frames of those.
that'd be good to have. I'll share it.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Okay, gentlemen.
Take care, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thanks. Yep. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
All right, great.
See
Thank
you.
you.
Pleasure to meet you. Oh, you're.
Huh?
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Get through this and we'll get into that. Like to share.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. We'll do it in a.
Okay, let's move on here. We've got our minutes from February 24th. Anyone have any changes, edits, additions, deletes?
The minutes from February
Thank you.
Seconded?
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. Expenditures. Late period, 18,625.38. Any questions on these items?
It's in paper.
Yeah, that was my minutes paper, that was in copy of my.
It's nice. Or I have no.
Do you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept expenditures.
second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Sorry? Oh, yeah. So we got one resolution here. Joan, I don't even know where this other resolution is. This wasn't on the agenda. One you, where we're gonna table anyway.
The discussion. For the budget?
Oh, yeah.
No budget and.
This is resolution, keeping that on.
Yeah, that one.
On all
It's
the,
just like,
all the appointments.
Yeah, that's not the resolution I have in the packet here.
There should be two.
Yeah, well,
here's the.
I have purchase
the
and
security-
fencing,
Yeah, fencing.
And then I
security.
have-
yeah, that's the resolution I want to discuss.
policies, standards and procedures.
Yeah, let's talk about the 10,185.40 for the fencing. Or this is for the cameras,
That's
I'm
just
sorry.
cameras.
Yeah, that's for the cameras.
All right, so this is a resolution to approve the spend for the camera work that's required, yeah?
And this is,
Correct.
this is only, it says purchase and installation, but really it's installation, because we already own
Correct.
all of them. Yeah.
So it doesn't address the server where the server's located.
well, don't, I think the title.
Yeah, that, I mean, that
Yeah,
could,
there's no fencing involved, right?
Right.
there's
Purchase,
no fencing involved.
And it's not even
Or
purchased.
security improvement.
Reinstallation.
Yeah, these, we can cross out the purchase and installation of fencing and just call it security.
Yes.
All right, can I get a motion to approve this with all the
With only
cleanup
security.
that's required on the resolution?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Okay. And then this housekeeping one with all of the requirements we're gonna table, because there's a lot more work to be done, a lot of changes, Jones about it, so we'll table that for now.
Okay.
And moving on, Dan, you wanna give us an update?
Go through, some quick updates on East Parcel. The approval, was, received from Department of Health, about 2 weeks ago. And the, sewer flow was restored.
Celebration.
Okay, the sewer flow is now going through the reconstructed sewer, as of the end of last week. WSP still has to, provide 2 signed and sealed original copies of the as-bills, to the Department of Health to close out the permit, which should be going in tomorrow. And as for some work out there that was also completed, the water main tie-in, the work that Sean Zons was doing in Beekman Avenue and going north, into the East Parcel. As well as they've started, wrapping up the drainage, the closed drainage system, along Continental Street and Clinton at the, the northern, limit of the project limits, kind of working from both ends towards the middle. Over the next couple of weeks, the contractor, excuse me, will be wrapping up, some of the drainage work, starting to work on, the light pole and conduit installations, and really closing out the, utility work, so that they can start getting into the curbing, sidewalk, the actual forming of the proper road. Jumping forward to the skate park project. This past Tuesday at the work session, I walked through some of the court and field layout options with the Board of Trustees. They've asked to further investigate the geometry or location of the bridge to see if more can be accommodated within the active rec portion of the site that would be between the bridge and Point South. As well as looking to hold a public hearing
to solicit feedback from the public on what is more important to them in terms of a larger multipurpose field, or multipurpose field that would facilitate more sports, or additional racket sport courts.
Yeah, was it gonna be a public hearing or I think it was?
Well, that's what I recall from when I left the meeting, but
I
that's,
don't remember if it was a hearing or feedback, but regardless, same idea.
So
So
the location of the bridges depends on the geometry of the other side.
to a certain degree, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of
There's,
things to talk about on this, so I think we can do that later, but I think there's a lot of other things that need to be explored. I was saying them on the TV while I was watching the meeting last week on TV. On TV.
you gotta be here in person to yell.
Right.
What were you yelling about? Were you pro court or pro field?
No, not that. It's about the bridge.
Oh,
We can discuss it later. Continue, Dan.
all right, so I'm gonna just jump through a quick third quarter update on mostly LDC operating and project costs. We're about 75, or we are 75% through our fiscal year. And to date, or as of the last meeting, we're about 78% through our operating budget. So we're currently looking at the projections, looking to come in around or slightly under budget for this fiscal year by about $23,000. Again, something I monitor on a monthly basis, but it doesn't look like there's any concerns about exceeding our budget, at least as of right now. As far as the East Parcel projects, we have or are projected to exceed our construction inspection, budgets. This is mostly due to just a number of delays and extensions of time that were encountered, over the course of this project. But looking, big picture, we're pretty close to about 90% in terms of progress and schedule for that project. So we should be wrapping up in the coming weeks as we get into the spring period. Similarly for the the park project, and really the only expenditures here are for Woodard and Curran. We are about 75% through their design budget. But pretty much the design that they're doing up front is complete, excepting any changes in terms of the court layouts. And we haven't even, this is a design build, a bulk of the costs we haven't even gotten into, because that'll be once we actually execute the design build amendment. So again, project wide, we're only about 9% of the total project cost, right? When just that 75% of the upfront design, 9% of the total project cost. And then I just wanted to do a quick update on the Climate Smart Communities grant. So we did hear back from the DEC that they are accepting of a phased DPW project, so that we can take advantage of the $2 million that was granted towards the relocation of the DPW facility. The project must include, the one caveat is it must include a physical structure, which as part of the work plan that we have worked back and forth with DEC on, would include the covered portion of the vehicular storage building, so not the enclosed, pretty much a open canopy, but it still allows, when complete, the DPW to get a lot of their critical, equipment out of the flood zone and protected from most of the elements.
do you have a project cost estimate for that with the vehicular storage building, the
The-
peripherals, the paving, whatever.
Right, so
assumption, I guess.
the total project cost is essentially mirroring the budgeted cost from the beginning, which is a $4 million project. Right, and that's inclusive of some of the design work that's already been completed. Mostly site work, and then again, a large chunk of it is the covered structure. So there, we do have a breakout of, a budget that is
And that
associated with
includes
that.
the paving and the access road to
Yeah.
the store, covered store.
Correct.
And the
So
salt shed?
the salt shed and fueling is not included in that project. or
What
at least-
material storage base?
That is. Yep, so like the adjacent to where we constructed the wall already.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
so that, I can share a graphic of what was shared with,
Okay.
that kind of gives you a better idea of the limits of what's included and what's excluded.
Yeah, I think you and the trustees need to figure out what you want to do.
So that project is on the list of items that are like high top.
Yeah, I saw that meeting,
Yeah,
but like, we just need a
especially with 50%.
very,
grant.
tell us what to do,
Yeah, I think it would be that project. the
Yeah.
4 million back of house.
just the 4 million.
Yeah, to start with, yeah, that has the 50% match.
Right, okay, that's, I think we should just make sure that, that we shouldn't be doing something else too,
What else did you have in mind?
that might be cost effective to do at the same time. Another sliver of what's
Anything on the back
Like
that might
the
be
salt
hard to
shed.
get
back of the
to.
house
Yeah.
type stuff,
Is there something else? I mean, if we made it a 5 million project, would it cover something that we're missing? Is there anything missing from?
No, absolutely. You could certainly include the salt shed. I mean, as part of the grant, the contract with the state, it's gonna be limited to the bare minimum of what we need to do. But as part of a bigger picture
That's
project,
my point,
We
Lauren.
could-
It's-
Yeah.
certainly,
If
yeah.
we're gonna do the 4 million project.
Right,
We don't wanna miss an opportunity to do a few other items, maybe.
in the same area. Yeah, so maybe what would be helpful is if the 4 million is the floor, what is?
Yeah, right.
Are there any other back of house items that if you don't do it when you're doing the other ones, it's gonna be problematic? Like, I don't know.
Not problematic, but if you're doing
More
back of
cost.
house, I mean, there certainly is a cost effectiveness to adding the salt shed and the fueling.
Yeah,
Since that kind of is just one more thing that you can check off the list of getting relocated from the existing facility.
And those were already kind of broken out. It's called-
There's separate breakouts.
From the floor.
Like
Good
add-on.
problem to have. I think it's a trustee
Yeah.
decision, but yeah, you should just know what.
Can you do the add-on costs for those?
Yeah, and it's also important to note that we do have estimated budgets based on, work that's already been done, but an important part is going to be re-engaging with an
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
architect.
So it could be 5 million instead of 4. Yeah.
There's gonna be a range,
Can
yeah.
you provide the range that was already estimated for the salt shed and the fueling? So.
Yeah, I can add that
Yeah.
too, as to
Yeah.
just give you kind of like. a
And then we'll
bullet
assume
list.
it can go up by 10, 20%,
Mhm.
depending.
What's the re-engagement?
Going out to bidding.
The first step would be going back to an architect, right? Because we're going to have to take, what we essentially have is about 1,000 sheets. That's a full DPW facility. They've got to carve that down, make sure that we're still meeting all the, building code and refine it down to a much smaller, just repeat the first phase that's going to proceed. Then we were able to advertise and get true construction costs. That's going to be kind of the interim step between moving forward, but,
So
before we go to
there's,
the
we
build.
can't go back to the. Couple years ago, and ask if they're still interested.
They're definitely still interested, I can tell you that.
Why would we need an architect to just take sheets out of pages? They have all the information.
Because there's,
It's essentially a shed.
that's true, but there is enough that's changing within, they're not building a full vehicular storage building, right? So there's gotta be a way to slice and separate those two things. That someone has to look at.
There's
if we're-
mechanical systems and stuff. is what
Yeah,
you're
well,
saying.
there's lighting, there's drainage, that someone's gotta go through and say, we do need to do these, but we don't need to do those, right? And parcel it out.
Well,
so that
yeah,
it can be bid accurate.
I would expect we're eliminate something there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But I would just be worried about, God forbid, we had this throwaway involved. Full DPW doesn't go up, so the design of the $4 million project has to take into account that there will be
It's a temporary condition.
a bigger
Correct.
project, so it should remain,
Right.
be a part of the bigger project at some point. in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah.
So they're effectively taking what was a full
Plan.
design and here's chapter one, and then
Yeah.
the rest would come at some future point.
And that will allow full relocation.
It would allow for pretty much all the vehicles, right, except the ones that they need to keep in, like the back
Enclosed,
trucks would
okay.
stay in the enclosed building. And it doesn't relocate any of the workshops and that, but I mean, what it does allow is for the garbage trucks, trailers, plows, all the equipment that's just sitting in the middle of the east parcel, that's been flooded.
Rusting.
Time to time, it gets it up, out of the flood zone and for a good chunk of it, keeps it protected from the elements. So.
Okay,
And other than that, just, our next meeting is, for March 24th, so that would be 2 weeks from today. Just in case anyone has any conflicts or knows that they're not gonna make it, make sure you have a quorum.
all right, thanks. Any, old business or new business? We are gonna go into exec. We've got several contract negotiation and legal items to discuss, but before that, anybody else have anything? Okay. Can I get a motion to go into exec?
Motion to go into exec.
Second that.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.